A big topic of conversation, if you've been watching the commission meetings, has been dealing with a generator that's up north of Fort Scott that is, according to people living around it, making their lives very, very miserable. And the way they describe it, it sounds like that actually is the case, that it's very, very loud and makes it hard to sleep and hard to enjoy their property. The discussion mostly is centered around, can we create laws that will keep them from being able to operate that generator? And if you've noticed, there was a recent moratorium passed on running more than 3 computers for commercial purpose mining cryptocurrencies, which basically says if this is owned by a corporate entity, and these 3 computers actually happen to be, I'm not allowed to run a particular algorithm on this. Now, that doesn't really bother me from the standpoint that I'm not trying to mine Bitcoin with this, and it's not something I'm interested in doing, but it still is kind of interesting to see how broad the law is, that this is what falls within the scope of being banned, when the actual thing producing the sound is a generator and is not mentioned at all in the moratorium. But that set aside, what's being discussed now is having some sort of ordinance against noise, some types of rules for the entire county about how much noise you're allowed to make before you are, according to the ordinance that's been passed around, either subject to $500 fine or put into jail. What I don't think a lot of people realize is that we actually have laws to deal with this today. I was talking to somebody on the planning committee, and they said there's no way to do anything about this unless we pass some type of ordinance or some type of codes. And while I understand why it might look like that, there actually are laws to deal with it. So let's look at this situation right here. Here we've got my attempt to draw a generator. We've got this generator, and it's loud, and people around it don't like the sound. It's severely impacting their way of life. What we have today is, while there is no ordinance of exactly how much sound they can make, they do have standing in a court of law for a nuisance case, basically saying that their neighbor here that's running this generator is severely impacting their way of life in an unreasonable way, and the court can order them to stop running that generator or to bring it down to certain levels of sound. Now notice there's not under those nuisance laws, there's not a particular sound that you can't do. It's just a matter of the facts and circumstances of a particular case. And so it's a law that's broad enough to encompass the specific situations that might happen without necessarily catching a bunch of other stuff in the net. That law exists today. Matter of fact, there was a situation up in Kansas City where someone had a pickleball court was put in right next to their house. And they said it was very, very loud. They weren't able to sleep. It was very distracting, and it was severely impacting their way of life. So they started legal proceedings and then settled out of court. They found a way to, whoever was running the pickleball courts, to work out an agreement that was satisfactory to both sides, and so they didn't have to take it to court. So it wasn't a long, really, really expensive legal thing, as far as I can tell, because it never actually went all the way to court. They just had to write a letter saying, hey, we're going to sue you if you don't do something about this, and we have good standing for it, and we have a very good chance of winning. And that took care of the issue. It brought everybody to the table and got a resolution. In that type of case, which is, keep in mind, this is what we have today, and then we'll talk about what's being proposed. In that type of situation, what you would do is, the people that have standing is not the whole county. If you live far away, it doesn't impact you at all, you don't have standing to do anything about it. The county commissioners don't have standing to do anything about it because there's no county law against it. The people that do have standing to do something about it are the people that can say that they're impacted, that's impacting their quality of life. So let's say that these people live around the generator, and these people say it's not bothering them, don't want to mess with it, it's not a big enough deal to them, so they don't want to participate in any type of legal action, but these do. So they get together, they pool their resources, and they can hire a lawyer to write a letter saying that they need to cease and desist from their sound, brings people together to the table, and they can work it out. Or if the company is not willing to work with them and reach a satisfactory resolution, then they could take it all the way to a court case if they want to. Don't have to do that, but it gives it, they have standing to do that because it's impacting their way of life. This is what we have today. This could be done. As a matter of fact, when some of the individuals went and talked to the commissioners last year, this was exactly what they were told to do. They said, you have standing to deal with this as a nuisance lawsuit. That is what you need to pursue, because that's the fastest way to do something with it. The commissioners didn't have standing. The people in the rest of the county don't have standing to file a lawsuit. This is what we have today. Here's what's being proposed. So if we pass a noise ordinance, or other things that have to do with the entire county, where instead of it just being a facts and circumstances of the case here, we will be setting rules like decibel levels or whatever that apply to the entire county. Now, from one point of view, that might be seen as a good thing, because now we have rules that apply to everyone. If we apply a rule to everyone for a particular decibel level, it will likely make the county not quite as loud as it is today. There's places that will be affected. Now, some of the rules that were being talked about as a proposed ordinance feel like they were pretty low levels for a rural county, but there are things I think my neighbors should be allowed to do that I don't really want them to do, but it seems like it might be good overall for the county. In this type of situation, if we go through this process of creating rules that apply to the entire county, what that does is it actually gives the county commissioners standing to do something about it. You know, the county itself has standing to go ahead and take this person to whoever has the generator to court, or throw them in jail, or fine them $500 a day, or whatever the rules end up saying. So that could be seen as a good thing, because now the county's able to do something that over here people have to do for themselves. What you need to consider, though, is how is that actually being funded? Where over here it's being funded by the people who are saying, I don't like this, I'm going to do something about it. Over here, you're now using tax money from everybody in the entire county, whether they care about that particular issue or not, to fund giving the county a mechanism to make this quieter. Now, some people say this is absolutely what we want to do, because we don't want people to have to pay out of pocket to deal with a nuisance lawsuit. We would rather have everyone paying money in taxes and our tax money used to get rid of or to deal with issues where a neighbor's being too loud. I see some issues with that long term, but I don't think it's an irrational position. That does seem like so here in this case, everybody is actually contributing to trying to deal with noise in the county. Long term, I'm not sure this is actually the best thing for the county, but if people hold this position that it's better and actually understand what that looks like, I don't know that this is an irrational position. What I am concerned is that some people don't actually realize that trying to pass ordinances and stuff means that the county now is a position where they're going to be funding the trying to police these things and stuff like that. And if you're okay with paying more taxes in order to try to create a larger government that controls more things in the county, this probably makes perfect sense. And like I said, even though that's not something that I think is necessarily the best thing for Bourbon County, there are very rational people that would think that's exactly what they want for Bourbon County. So it's not an irrational place to be, but it is very different. Over here, we've got a lot of self-efficacy on the part of the people who are actually impacted to go ahead and do something about it. They have a way to do something about it. They don't have to do something about it if it's not bothering them to the level that they want to do something about it, but it can be done. There is a means today to actually deal with a neighbor that's causing noise, that's making it where you can't enjoy your property. Over here, we now have a way that you can deal with a neighbor that's making a lot of noise by having the county do it for you. You may see that as a good thing, you may see that as a bad thing, but these are two different approaches. Here's what we have today, here's what's being proposed. This requires a significant increase in the footprint of what the government does in our county. You might see that as good or bad, but I do have to recognize it will increase. It increases the amount of government in our county. Over here, we have what we have today, which has a mechanism to deal with this that doesn't increase the footprint of what's in the county, but it requires the people who are actually saying they're affected to go ahead and start the proceedings and take action on their own to go ahead and do something about this. Two very different approaches. I think there are very rational reasons to think that you want this. There are very rational reasons for thinking that you want this as well. There are also a lot of people who are very irrational and want one thing without understanding what it actually entails. But this isn't an irrational position. This isn't an irrational position. I think a lot of it just comes down to what do you see the role of government? How big do you want the government in your county? And there are people that are very intelligent that want both things. Want a very small government where people are taking responsibility to do things on their own and can deal with things when they need to. Other people want a much larger government that does more things for them. Both legitimate positions. You may fall into one or the other, or maybe you fall somewhere in between. But just recognize, here's what we've got today. Here's what's being proposed. This would change a lot of things, maybe in a way that you see as good, maybe in a way that you see as bad.